Welcome back, APUSH students. Today is Unit 2 in just 5 minutes. I'm going to be going over everything you need to know about this unit for the exam. So here's a quick list of the key terms and key people. I encourage you to take a look at those. So here's the unit statement. Between 1607 and 1754, English, Spanish, Dutch, and French colonizers built settlements in North America. Each region developed distinct cultures, economies, and political systems. This era set the stage for colonial resistance and the rise of slavery. So here are the regional differences between colonies and settlements amongst the Europeans. In New England, there were Puritans and their small towns, and they had mixed economies. These areas obviously had to farm to get their feet off the ground, but then it turned into an industrialized economy as the times went on. The middle colonies were very diverse. They relied heavily on grain, and they also experienced a lot of religious tolerance. For example, the Quaker sect of religion were very open to different kinds of peoples, and a lot of people who experienced persecution in different areas would go to the middle colonies. The South relied heavily on big agriculture and farming. They had a couple cash crops, including cotton obviously, and all that relied heavily on slave labor. The people who grew large farming empires had the most power in the South, and that's how you get a sort of aristocratic form of government and society. But all of that together shows that geography heavily shaped economic and social life in the European colonies. So now we look at the labor systems of indentured servitude and slavery. Early labor in the New World focused on indentured servitude. People would come over to the New World and they would work basically for nothing to have a opportunity to live in the New World. The headright system functions similarly, where people would buy out other people's means of travel to the New World in exchange for their labor. By the late 1600s, African slavery expanded and started to take over in the South. And then you start to see the racism inherent in slavery start to infiltrate into the means of government as society started to implement slave codes, and of course the very harsh Middle Passage was left totally unregulated. So the early economy in the colonies, there was mercantilism, where the colonies enriched the mother country, which is of course Britain. The colonies worked to produce raw resources that were sent to Britain. Shipping over the Atlantic Ocean between Africa, who shipped slaves, and the colonies, who received the slaves and then sent resources to Britain, and all that led to a triangular trade system and a transatlantic economy that started to expand and boom. Britain mostly ignored the colonies and allowed them to govern themselves because they didn't want to expend too many resources in that area. And this led to a colonial self-government, where the colonies established their own means of government and society and how they wanted their societies to operate. And this eventually started to clash with Britain when they tried to crack down as the colonies started to expand and get a little bit more rebellious. So religion and culture. The Puritans, who mainly occupied the Northeast, they stressed moral discipline and education. It's probably the strictest religious sect of Christianity. Then you have the religious dissenters, who founded new colonies. These people, like I said earlier, mainly found refuge in the middle colonies. And then you have the First Great Awakening that sparked religious revival amongst the colonies, and it also challenged old church authority. This is where you started to see people carve out a little bit more personal autonomy in these heavily religious societies. So what's next going into Unit 3? Britain and France start to compete in what is now like the modern United States area of the Americas. And Britain also enforces stronger policies within the colonies, which starts to clash with how the colonies operate and sparks the early conflict that leads to the revolution. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next unit, and goodbye. Yo, if you're super cool and awesome, you should follow my Twitter, or X if you're that kind of person. It's at Clark4724. I post a lot of random stuff on there, but I also post channel updates and when my next videos are coming out. So if you're gonna keep watching my channel, then I recommend you follow, and thanks.